Bonjour everyone! First video on this new channel, and honestly we are super excited to have you here. And over the past few months we received a lot of messages asking for Blender content, so we thought maybe why not create a dedicated space for it? We already have an amazing community on Unreal, so we wanted to create the same kind of environment focused on Blender, creative workflows and everything that can help you to create in 3D. So welcome guys to this very first video. Let's go! First of all, what are shape keys? Shape keys, also known as blend shapes, let you tweak a 3D model by stirring different versions of it. Instead of using bone, you simply blend between these shapes to create things like facial expressions, muscle flexing, or corrective fixes. They are especially useful for precise, artist-driven control over how a mesh deforms. And guys, if you love sculpting, this is honestly one of the best ways to express both yourself and your character. And today, we are using Snow, the new character created by Blender Studio to showcase advanced, stylized facial rigging. It's new with Blender 5 and it's definitely worth checking out. It's not free, but it's reasonably priced. And it also supports Blender development, so definitely go take a look. Before anything else, it's really important to make sure your mesh has perfect symmetry and that all transforms are applied. You want to start from a clean and solid base. Now, what's the difference between bones and shape keys? Do you have to use one or the other, or maybe both? Well, it really depends on your project and also how comfortable you are with bones, skinning and all of that. Like slightly painful stuff, right? For major elements like body, neck and head rotation, bones are definitely your best friends. For example, for the face, shape keys can be a much better option. Why? First, because they let you avoid creating tons of facial bones and dealing with skinning headaches. And the second, because they are much simpler to set up. That said, it always depends on the project. You can go full bones, a mix of both, which is the most common approach, or even fully shaped keys based for the face. Now, just to quickly recap how bones work. Bones are objects that let you drive parts of your mesh based on vertex influence assigned during the skinning process. You create them using what's called an armature, place them where needed, and then parent your mesh to the armature. You can use automatic rates, for example, which generates skinning based mostly on the position of the bones, or start with empty groups if you want full control. Then, in wet paint mode, you define how much influence each bone has by painting directly on the mesh. As you can see, it's quite a long process and it can quickly become tedious, especially when dealing with facial expressions. Now, for shape keys, it's a different story. It's way simpler, you'll see. Here in the Object Data Properties tab, under the Vertex section, you will find the Shape Keys panel. From there, it's basically two steps. First, click the plus icon to create your base shape, which is essentially the rest pose of your character. Then click it again to create a new shape key that's ready to be sculpted. A shape key interpolates between value of 0 and 1, where 0 is the base shape and 1 is the full influence of your sculpted shape key. So make sure you set it to 1 before you start sculpting. Then it's as simple as that. Jump into sculpt mode and start sculpting. Now let's check something on the left board here. For example, Blender has improved a lot when it comes to sculpting, and in my opinion, it's now a real competitor to ZBrush. Usually we sculpt one side without symmetry and then mirrors the pose afterward. We will get to that in a second. Once your expression is created, you can rename it and control it using the slider. It's kind of easy, right? And you can create as many shapes keys as you want. Next, how do we create a mirrored pose on the right brow? It's just as simple. In the shape key menu, duplicate current shape key, whether it's a value 1 or 0. Then in that same menu, use the mirror or flip option. Depending on your mesh, one option might work better than another, but if your mesh is perfectly symmetrical, the standard flip across the local x-axis should work without any issues. And just like that, you've got two poses created in a second. This is definitely not something you will do as quickly with bones. You can create very specific expression or muscle deformation like we just did, but you can also build full expression that you will trigger later during animation. Having a mix of both is really great because it gives you a lot of flexibility when animating your character. So I went ahead and created a few more expressions for our character, mainly using sculpt mode, but you can also use edit mode and move vertices around, that works just as well. Snow comes with themes that makes selecting areas much easier. By pressing L, you can select linked geometry, and you can also use scene-based selection from the menu. This is really helpful to quickly isolate parts of the mesh without having to redo selections every time. For example, thanks to that, I can easily sculpt an open mouth expression. And in edit mode, you can select the area you want, then switch to sculpt mode and retrieve that selection using face sets, specifically face set from edit mode selection. From there, you can enable face set auto masking from the top menu to make full use of that selection, and it's super helpful. You can also combine it with masks if needed and really fine-tune your selection workflow. And when you're done, you can clear the mask from the menu and reset the face selection using the face set from visible option. In sculpt mode, you've got a wide variety of brushes you can use, from simple and effective ones like the move brush or smooth, to more advanced brushes that let you fine-tune your shape keys in much more detail. Alright, now let's talk about a few tips and tricks that can save you a lot of time. One issue you will probably run into is not being able to apply or export your shape keys because you have an active subdivision modifier on your model. There are two ways to deal with this. The first one is simply to avoid adding subdivisions before creating your shape keys. And the second one, and honestly it's a real lifesaver, is to project all the shape keys into a new mesh without subdivisions. The key here is to have the exact same vertex counts. So now let me explain you how it works. Keep your original mesh with the subdivision modifier active, duplicate it, then remove all the shape keys and delete the subdivision modifier on the duplicates. So now you have your original mesh with shape keys and subdivision, and a clean duplicated mesh with no shape keys and no subdivision. Next, select the mesh with the shape keys, then select the duplicated one, go to the Object Data Properties tab into the shape key section, open the drop-down menu and choose Copy from Objects. And just like that, your shape keys are transferred and you will be able to export your mesh without any issues. Another really useful tip is that you can create a new shape keys based on a combination of multiple shape keys. Let's say you have a base expression plus some additional muscle deformation like the brows. With all of those active, you can use the new shape from mix option to create a brand new shape keys that combine everything. This is super handy for building final expressions from all the smaller pieces you've created. So now, perfect, you made it, and I'm sure you will be a shape key pro in no time. Now, let's quickly talk about animation, of course. Animating shape keys is actually very straightforward. Using the slider on each shape keys, you can insert keyframes with this little key icon. Depending on where your timeline cursor is, it will create a keyframe at a specific frame. Then just change the value, move forward in time, add another keyframe and repeat. And just like that, you've got your shape keys animation up and running. From there, you can refine everything in the graph editor, adjust interpolation, tweak keys in and out, and modifiers if needed, and really polish your animation. That's more of an annual workflow inside the editor to animate your shape key, but you can also create controls to drive them, which opens up a lot of possibilities. Here's a simple and concrete example. For example, let's create a sphere, place it next to your mesh, and make sure to apply its scale and rotation. You can of course use more advanced control shapes like curves, but a sphere works perfectly for this example. Now, on your shape keys, right-click on your slider value, make sure it's set to 0, and choose Add Driver. This will open the driver properties where you can go pretty deep and build a complex setup. So let's keep it simple. Under the type, choose Average Value. So you're directly driving the interpolation between 0 and 1 of your shape keys. Then select the transform type and space you want to use, let's say Z location in word space. After that, pick up your target object, in this case our control sphere. And now when you move the sphere along the Z-axis, it directly drives your shape key. Super simple. Now instead of keyframing the shape key in the editor, you will animate the control objects. If you need to tweak anything, you can always go back to the driver setting by right-clicking on the value again and editing the driver. And and that's why we love Blender. Simple, straightforward, and incredibly powerful. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week for a new one. Ciao.
No.